Great. So I'd like to call to order the committee of the whole meeting for February 5th, 2025 for the town of Annapolis Royal. All councillors are present, no regrets or absences. Are there any additions to the agenda?
There's no additions, but I would like to move item 11.1, new business, request for decision on the water utility cross connection up under the unfinished business. So when our staff member is here, he can talk to both items and then go home.
Okay, great. Then in the absence of any objections, we'll consider the agenda approved. Okay, and the committee of the whole minutes from January 2024, any comments to them?
No changes, but just a request that in future the minutes refer to me as she, her, hers. So that's going forward for the minutes.
Okay, great. Then we'll consider the minutes adopted. So we will now move to the presentation on property. Oh, wait a minute, I have two things I have to do. First thing, we do have members of the public present, so I need to read the announcement regarding that. So today's meeting is being streamed live on the Town of Annapolis Royal YouTube channel. Those present in the gallery today attending public meeting of the council, you're consenting to having your image, voice, and comments recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and/or the CAO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. So I'd like to begin this part, the meeting also by acknowledging that this is African Heritage Month. The theme this year is Legacy in Action. Celebrating Black brilliance provides an opportunity to shine a spotlight on Nova Scotia's rich cultural heritage and the significant contributions of people of African descent. This month-long celebration invites both visitors and industry professionals to explore and honor the vibrant history of African Nova Scotians, whose influence has shaped the province for over 400 years. This year's theme also aligns with the conclusion of the Second United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent, 2025 to 2034, encouraging reflection on empowerment and leadership. So without further ado, then we will go to our presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. And Your Worship, Lawyer and Council, thank you for inviting us here again this year. I believe there's some new faces on council. I've shortened down the presentation a little bit, so we're going to try to fit it into 12 minutes or so. And my colleague, Andrew Wilsey, who's here with me tonight, I'm going to get him to share his screen and have him, sort of move the slides as we go along. Andrew has been with PVSC, what is Andrew, about 15 years or so? Or
just over 16 years.
And Andrew's the Assistant Director of Operations. He's been an assessor for a number of years, so he knows a number of the properties in the Annapolis Valley. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Paul Baisley, and I've been with PVSC for 9 years. I bring a little bit of a unique perspective to property valuation services in that I was an elected municipal official for 12 years. And I was the mayor of town of Windsor for 8 years prior to joining PVSC 9 years ago. So I know I've walked in your shoes. I know how the municipalities operate and those types of things. And so I think that's to me a positive for me being at PVSC to know how you work and everything. So yeah, you want to put the I'll go through these slides fairly quickly. Stop me anytime along the way, or if you want to wait till the end, that's great too, if you have any questions. And Andrew, if you could, when we get to 10 minutes, if you want to just give me a little shout or something. And we do have a couple of slides at the end that we've added on as an addendum. So if you have questions on those, that's great too, but we put it in there for additional information for any new counselors. So next slide there, Andrew.
Yeah.
So you may recognize this flow diagram in that we included this on every assessment notice this year to all the property owners within Annapolis Royal and around the province. Generally, just as a bit of information on how assessment and the property assessment taxation system works in Nova Scotia. It starts with the province. The province enacted the Assessment Act. They also enacted the Property Valuation Services Act in around the year 2000 or shortly after. And that basically established PVSC as a separate entity. PVSC, or we used to be in a department of the government, but now we're a not-for-profit, independent organization. So we prepare the assessment notes, assessment notices. We assess every property in the province, some 650,000 properties in Nova Scotia. We provide that data to the municipalities and also to property owners, but the municipality uses that data and the assessments in order to prepare your budgets and to prepare the billings for property owners. And last but not least, of course, is the property owners who receive the assessments and the tax billings from the municipality to pay for the services that you provide. So about PVSC, we were created, as I mentioned, under the Property Valuation Service Corporation Act. We are mandated by the Nova Scotia Assessment Act, provincial legislation. We are municipally funded and we're a not-for-profit. We are funded by all 49 municipalities in the province. We're governed by a board of directors. That board of directors typically is around 12 people. It can be a little more, it can be a little less, but essentially or usually it's a sort of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, in that 1/3 would be municipal elected officials, such as yourself, councillors, or mayors and wardens. 1/3 would typically be staff or municipal staff or previous municipal staff that have experience in municipal governance. And the other third would be independent, outside or private professionals that volunteer to be on the board as well. Currently, the chair of the board is Deputy Mayor Joe Feeney from the town of Mahone Bay. We also have the NSFM director, Juanita Spencer, on the board of directors as well. And across Nova Scotia, we have about 130 employees, and they live, work, and play in 62 communities throughout Nova Scotia. What we do and what we don't do, because sometimes there's a little bit of confusion by property owners, but PVSC, we deliver the assessment roll to all 49 municipalities. That's what we are mandated to do every year, annually, under the Act. I had mentioned 650,000 assessment notices. They went out about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, which many of you would have received one as well. We administer the capped assessment program and the seasonal tourist business designated program, and we administer those on behalf of the province. That's provincial legislation. But what PVSC does not do, we do not have the authority to set tax rates or collect taxes or create tax policies or to provide tax relief. Those are under the purview of council in Nova Scotia under the Municipal Government Act. So we're the Assessment Act, and councils and municipalities are the Municipal Government Act. We also don't determine land ownership. There's sometimes some confusion there in that the land registry determines land ownership, and they determine that they basically oversee properties, the parcels of property, the parcels of land. They are the ones that set the boundaries of land and sort of the acreages and what piece of land actually exists and what doesn't and where is it. So they provide that information to us. But a lot of people think that we're the ones that do land, but we don't. We just get the information from the registry. So under the Assessment Act, we are required to assess properties at market value. And market value essentially being, those properties that sell on the open market by willing buyers and willing sellers with no, free of undue influence. And when I say undue influence, things such as tax sales or foreclosure sales or possibly family sales may not be market value sales. They may or they may not, but we look at all sales and we determine which ones we consider to be market value sales. And we use that sales data in order to determine which way the market is going, what the market trending is, and how much assessments should be adjusted each year. So the tricky part about the Assessment Act is our market values are 1 year back. We are looking back 1 year in that we set our market valuation date 1 year prior to the roll going out. So for the 2025 roll, which we just sent out a few weeks ago, we are actually looking at sales and market trending that occurred leading up to 2023 and through the 2023 calendar year. So we're looking at actual data which occurred, typically it's 1 to 2 years ago. Could be a little bit longer, but essentially the roll is based on market data 1 to 2 years ago. We also collect data on the physical nature of the property each year. So we actually collect that right up to the time that the roll goes out. Essentially, it's a 1 month before December 1st, before the roll goes out, we collect permit data as far as the physical characteristics of the property. We add that to the roll. So we have market value 1 year back, the actual physical state right up to the time just before the roll goes out. Okay, Andrew. The program that probably we get the most questions on is the capped assessment program. We administer that, I mentioned it, and the cap essentially places a cap on the amount that a property value can go up, and that's the amount it can increase any year is capped at the Nova Scotia Consumer Price Index, or the CPI. This past year, CPI was 1.5%. That's determined at the end of October. It's from StatsCan. The numbers from StatsCan. The province gets that number and they advise us of the number. For the 2025 roll, CPI was 1.5%. Now this compares to previous years in the COVID period. CPI was the previous year, it was 3.2%. The year before that, at the height of COVID, was 7.7%. I should say pandemic, not COVID. And as the pandemic started, it was 5.4%. But typically CPI runs in the 1 to 3% range for Nova Scotia, or it has. So we're now back to 1.5%. I guess the main thing to remember about the cap is that we provide a market value assessment, which if you look at this example, market value assessment's $192,000. We also provide the capped assessment, which we maintain and calculate, in this example, $153,000. So the property owner gets the benefit of the lower of the two. So in this case, the $153,000, the lower of the two, is in the taxable assessed column of the assessment notice, and that's what your taxes would be based on. All right, Andrew. So just going back to what I said previously, the assessment roll is based on the 2023 calendar year market data, essentially. So the 2025 roll reflects that. So when you're thinking of the 2025 roll and why the values changed to where they did, or the extent that they did, think of what was going on back there. Back in 2023, things such as home building was beginning to clear. The value, the construction costs were starting to come down again, whereas through the pandemic, there were supply chain issues. Building materials were skyrocketing. Now we're starting to see that bubble start to come down the other side of that curve a little bit. There was housing crunch. Once in a generation, starting to come down off that a little bit. Office vacancies were still up, so that some of the commercial properties were still suffering a little bit, and home prices still climbing. all through that period, all through 2023, although the number of sales were down a little bit, closer to more normal levels. All right, Andrew. So here's what your assessment roll, essentially the numbers were, the 2025 assessment roll. Annapolis Royal had a market value assessment roll of $142 million. Of that, residential property made up 90 million of that, which is the majority, of course, and there were 317 accounts. And commercial made up 52 million on 131 accounts. Now, I guess the key figure here, or the taxable figure, the residential assessed value with that is cap adjusted, that's 71 million. So you look at that 90 million and you compare it to the 71 million, and the cap rate, the CPI rate of 1.5% is impacted in that amount. So in this case, market value went up more than CPI. The CPI, or taxable amount, is lower for the municipality. All right, Andrew. I should say before, if you can go back to that, Andrew, just for a second. To make it a little more, make a little more sense, actually the residential lift, or the residential increase in assessment based on market value for Annapolis Royal was 8.7% this year. However, if you adjust that for cap, the residential increase in assessed value was only 6.2%. So you take the 8.7% increase essentially, and you've got a 1.5% CPI, it brings it down to 6.2%. All right, Andrew. Some of the activities for Annapolis Royal over the year. This was for this assessment roll. We had 18 permits that our assessors would pick up, and they do the inspections on the properties and add those to the roll. We had 22 property transactions. Those would be qualified sales that we use in our analysis when we reassess, do our reassessment for the roll for Annapolis for the 2025 year. And we had 14 appeals in 2024. Now, appeals are down a little bit this year, so those numbers might be go back to, typically we'd have 5 or 6 appeals for Annapolis Royal. Also, we, as far as property transactions, at the height of COVID, there were, just go back to that one just a second again there. In 2023, last year, we had 2020 or 22 last year. In 2023, during COVID, we had 20. So sales are still up pretty good in Annapolis Royal compared to what they would have been. Oh, no, just I'm looking at the wrong piece of paper I've got here. So sales in Annapolis Royal for the 2025 roll were there were 22 property transactions. For 2024, there were 42 property transactions, which was during the sort of the tail end of COVID. And the year prior to that, there were 35. But before COVID started, there were 27 sales in Annapolis Royal. So 27 before COVID started, it increased. And now we're back down to 22. So we're getting back to more normal times. Sorry, I confused that a little bit. So we are now in the appeal process. Property owners have the right to appeal their assessment notice if they feel that that they've been entered on the roll in error, or if they feel that the value is inaccurate or unfair. So each notice indicates the assessed value. So if a property owner should disagree, they can file an appeal. The appeals must be filed by February 13th, 2025. So essentially in 6-7 days, by midnight, February 13th, all the appeals must be filed by a property owner. If they file it on the 14th or later, then that would be considered a late appeal, and it would go directly to the NSAT tribunal, and the NSAT tribunal would have to have a hearing to determine why it was late and whether they would allow it to continue as an appeal. So if anybody's asking you, make sure you tell them it definitely needs to be in by February the 13th by midnight. It can be signed and a photo taken with your camera, and it can be sent to us. It can be mailed in. It can be faxed if people still are using fax, but you need your signature on it for sure. And essentially, there are 3 levels of appeal. So once the appeal is made, the initial level is PVSC has an assessor review that appeal. The assessor will make a determination. They may need more information. They may call the property owner, contact property owner. They may do an inspection. However, the assessor will have to make a decision whether they're going to confirm the appeal or make adjustments to the appeal. And a lot of times when we talk to property owners, they decide to withdraw the appeal. However, if they disagree, they may continue on to the Nova Scotia Assessment Appeal Tribunal. It's a little bit more formal, where there's an independent chair, typically would be a retired lawyer or a current lawyer. The appellant and PVSC would each have a representative, and they would provide their case essentially to the chair, and the chair would make a decision. So following that, if the appellant or the property owner continues to disagree or with the ruling by the NSAT chair, then they can continue that on to the Nova Scotia, the Utility and Review Board. That's a very formal process, and it takes quite a bit of time and requires quite a bit of due diligence and research on behalf of the property owner. However, they have the right to do that, and that's the top level appeal essentially in Nova Scotia. Unless they want to really carry it out to the Supreme Court. I don't think that happens very often, though. So finally, if you have any questions, we'd certainly urge you to send them to us. Before they appeal, it would be very good if they could pick up the phone or send us an email at these particular addresses here. Give us a call. We'll talk to them about it. They may still wish to appeal. We're not trying to talk anybody out of their appeal, but we try to provide them information as to how it's appealed, and go through the data on there that we have on file for them and see if there's any errors or omissions or that type of thing. So we would certainly encourage you to do that before, or have any of your property owners do that before they decide to formally appeal. So how's your time going along there, Andrew? We pretty much.
That's good. We're past the point now. Yeah, we're at the 20-minute mark. So
Are we 20 minutes? Oh,
yeah.
my goodness. All right, we'll close it off there. There's a couple other ones, but we'll leave it there and we'll go for questions and answers. Thank
Any
you.
questions from the council?
I have one. So just looking at our commercial taxable. So you've got 80 occurrences. So when you say 80 occurrences, and then we look at our tax exempt for commercial, which is 52. So is that 52 of the 80 then that are tax exempt? Is that how we'd read that on the assessment roll?
Yeah, I'll get Andrew to speak to that a little bit, but I'll get you to stop sharing the screen too, Andrew. That way
Yeah.
we can see everybody. All right.
Yeah, so there'll be thanks for the question. There'd be a breakdown of there'd be 50-some properties that would be of the exempt status, and then the remainder would be of your commercial taxable. And I believe, Paul, you have the numbers there that have like the commercial lift was, what was it, 4.3%?
It's 4.3% on the taxable side.
Yeah.
And it was pretty much flat, just 0.5% on the total commercial lift.
And how does that, in our case, 65% are exempt. How does that compare to other small municipalities? Do you have a kind of a sense of that? Like their percentage of tax exempt for commercial?
As far as the percentage of properties that are exempt versus taxable on the commercial side?
I was just wondering, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have I don't have a sense as to what the percentages would be typically for exempt. I might be able to get that quite quickly here. I'll give you an idea, but
Don't have to have it down, just a question, so I'll leave it open for others.
Just
Yeah.
since we need to move along, maybe if you could provide the answer after, we'd be very grateful.
yeah, I'll take a look while, if there's other questions here.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation. It was super helpful. We'll move on then to the next topic.
All right, and I'll thank you very much, and I will send a couple of examples of other towns and their taxable percentages or whatever. Thank you very much.
Just
Thank
a
you,
final
everyone.
little question. How many were successful on appeal?
All of them last year, all
All of
14
them, all 14.
were
Thank,
reduced.
okay, thank you. That was it.
All right, we ready to move on
No,
then?
I have the number for that. We had 5 adjusted on 13 appeals. So 5 out of 13 of those that were appealed were adjusted last year.
5 and 13.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mindy.
Right. Let's move on to the next topic, which is public input. Do we have any public input? No, okay. So now on to unfinished business. We'll start with the request for decision. Sorry? The request for decision for the wharf extension. So I'll need a motion around that. I'd like to suggest that we kind of consider this topic in 4 big baskets. The first being the decision regarding stopping commercial use, the second being the closure for an additional potential closure for an additional 2 months. The third one being the barriers, what do we want to do, what are the options, and the fourth one being the public meeting and how we'll handle that. So without further ado, I'll pass on to our staff member who's here to inform us. Are you doing a presentation?
No, I was
No.
here to speak about cross connection.
Yeah, no, I'm the wharf.
Oh, and the wharf.
Yeah. Well, you did the research on the barricades and.
Yeah, so we have a couple different options that are, so there's basically 2 different areas of barricade to be considered. One is for people, where there's a genuine fall hazard, as we all know, just over 30 feet at low tide, that kind of thing. And then barricades for the cars themselves at the other end, or the land end of the wharf, where the fall height, the height is not as substantial, but cars still need to be protected from going over the side. A couple options have been priced out with regard to the people barriers, if you will. Originally, we looked at the concrete Jersey barriers. Not super expensive, easy to put in place, reusable. They had some advantages, not the most attractive, as been pointed out before, and fair enough. After discussion with the engineers, it was deemed that they were too heavy as well. They're 1,200 and change kilos each, and we're talking about quite a few. And of course, they're not spread evenly across the wharf. They're right along the perimeter. It's a total of 500 linear feet that would have the barriers, so it's going to figure 8 feet on each, so it's quite big, obviously. We looked at the barricades from Uline, just because they're just one of the vendors, also called bicycle racks. They have potential. There are some small issues with that. Fixing them to the wharf, Public Works could do it, so there's only a staff time cost and a minimal materials cost. There is a gap at the bottom of those. It looks like it's about 1 foot, so they may not be the best in terms of, like, they'll keep an adult from going over, but they're not keep a child who's messing around, that kind of thing. But the cost wasn't super prohibitive. I believe that's a technical term. And then lastly, we're looking at chain link fence. You have a cost estimate for that. There are local contractors for installation of that. Public Works could assist manpower to keep the installation cost down on that. It's not super technical. There are some specialized tools involved, but we could assist, and that would make it more cost effective. Again, I think it was black vinyl coated was the one quoted. So, visually, it won't be as in your face as like the galvanized wood, that silver, so that would help a bit. OHS has said that this is acceptable in the terms of a railing, so it would work in that sense. So these are the options that are before you with regards to that. With regards to the curb, the wooden curbs, we still have the quote. I mean, it's a little old, but it's probably pretty close still from Stella Jones, though it's significantly lower. Originally, we were looking at 220 feet of wooden curb to be replaced. Our rough estimate says we about half of that. So our total cost, I think we estimated $6,000 for installation, but there is an asterisk at the end of that. The wood cost is obviously easy to determine. It's the installation cost that is a bit fluid. Because of the state of the riprap, which we know is decaying, that we have to weld. If the existing wooden brackets holding the wood have deteriorated, then they have to be cut off, the riprap has to be repaired, and then a new bracket has to be welded on. So that's a determination that would be made by the welding and the installation company. We're using the material cost, 100% of the material cost is the installation cost, which is a good industry guideline, but that obviously is not set in stone. So, that may or may not be accurate on the day, just depending, but that's a rough indicator for cost. Obviously visually, the wood would just be seamless. We'd, it'd look as it does now, just newer at that end. Any questions about that part?
That was just for the parking?
Yeah, so basically I wanna say it's 11 spaces that are currently, there, maybe 12.
So
And so just there, if you look at the original map that's being held up now, most of the rot was farther down. There was a significant section of rot just on the side of the wharf facing the hollow. So there's several pieces there. So we're not getting rid of all of the rot wood it's not at the other end of the wharf, but it's obviously much less down there.
So you're saying 6,000 and 6,000 for installation?
No, I think it's 6,000 total, if I'm remembering
Oh,
correctly,
okay.
because the original wood cost was 6,000 and then it was closer to 7,000. So I think we were saying 6,000 again, with the asterisks all in for installation of the wooden curbs.
But now we need less than half of the original.
Correct.
Right.
Okay,
but that's still that's,
yes, I'm just saying,
yeah,
just confirming that we,
we wouldn't, because we won't be doing the wooden curbs where the fencing
Yeah.
or the
Yeah,
other
the
is
fencing
going.
itself, well, because there won't be
Cars or
that'd be for
People.
people, so we just need a
Yeah.
fall protection.
So that's 6, and then the fencing would be 65
Material costs.
material, and then you're looking at 7.
to install.
Then again, using that ballpark, installation is roughly the same as material. We would endeavor to find a cost efficient contractor who's trusted. And we would supply labor as well. So I won't call 7 the worst case scenario, but we anticipate to be able to do better than 7. But in terms of approvals and guidelines, that's a safe number.
so that would be looking for the fencing, probably somewhere around 13,000 total.
Ish, yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
The technical ish.
Yeah.
Now, the installer would also have to wear fall arrest
Mhm.
when they're installing it. So that's why it would be preferred to contract it out. Because we might not have all the equipment to work on the wharf.
But we ended up purchasing some harnesses.
Yeah.
Harnesses and all that stuff
Understand.
that we currently don't have, right? So,
Yeah.
and would have to, the contractor obviously would have to be.
So in the package, there's a photo that shows 200 feet and a photo that shows 250 feet.
Yes, and staff are recommending the 250 feet
Okay.
due to the depths, and the pictures kind of just show the 50 feet really doesn't, yeah.
Okay. I just didn't see in the request for decision, which is
preferred.
preferred.
Yes, so in the comparison costs up at the top. We gave both options, with the galvanized and the black coated. And that was prior to getting the fencing, so the fencing the quote is at the 250 mark.
Question. So that would only allow for pedestrians past the parking spot, there would be no vehicles past that spot? That's for-
Yes, that's what's intended, yeah,
Okay.
because the chain link fence is not intended to, and obviously it's not appropriate to stop a vehicle.
So what could we do for barrier?
I would, because it's just to stop cars and keep it, I would say we'd use the rocks that are already there. I mean, that's what's at the far end now by the benches, is those 3 large rocks in the middle. It was deemed that the rocks along the edge weren't appropriate, so we wouldn't use them for that, obviously. But we can move them back and make a barrier with just plenty of spacing to allow people to pass through without drama, but not cars.
Maybe we could find a grant for more benches.
Sure.
Is the bench just sitting there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we could move
They
that
are
down.
movable, they
Yeah,
can be
yeah,
moved anywhere.
it's just, it would take a telehandler or a forklift, but.
Yeah,
they
but
can-
we could just move that
Yeah,
down for temporary.
yeah, Brown Brothers moved that with a forklift.
Forklift.
Yeah.
So
And it's pretty heavy.
it is,
Oh, it's
yeah,
a-
nobody's moving it by itself.
And if we were to consider to continue the closure for another 2 months, do you think that would be adequate time for you to do what you need to do, or?
So if we're talking about the 2 months, that I would imagine, I didn't speak with the chain.
Yeah, I'm not asking for a.
Yeah, but
commitment,
that should allow for lead times for materials to come in, to contract, to put out, we wouldn't do a formal RFP necessarily, but we would seek quotes as per our policy. Find a good contractor to use, get everything in line, and that should allow the weather to change significantly, that the work would be free of the glaciers we currently inhabit.
And potentially if we treated this the same way we treated the original closure, we would just, if more time was required, we'd revisit it at the 2-month mark and do what we're doing
For
now,
one more month,
basically,
or-
yeah, for whatever additional time was required.
And what are the advantages or disadvantages of stopping commercial use?
Significant, well, currently there is no genuine commercial use, I think it's fair to say, occasionally boats have tied up there. The one boat that seems to be there more than others is the boat that's in significant arrears to the town for
Mhm.
moorage and things like that. As I understand it, that boat can't come there anymore anyway, and so I would say there isn't a genuine commercial use any longer.
And if the barricade's up, that
But
would just
it would
make it,
prevent it, right?
prevent
Because
it,
simply
yeah.
loading and unloading would be very, very difficult. There's risk of damage. It just, by putting the guardrail in place for the general population to use, you would be greatly hindering any potential commercial use. So by saying no to this, because there really isn't a demand for commercial use any longer, this allows other more significant uses of by the general population.
Okay, and if we
Oh,
were,
I need to add something, sorry.
Yeah.
But if we do allow the commercial, then we have to fix all of the guardrails that are there. We have to fix the ladder that is there.
Correct.
We have to
make it
fix,
fit for
we
commercial
have,
use.
there's
yeah.
other items, so if the commercial use stays, then we have to. Follow the engineer report and fix all of those things to allow the commercial use to continue.
so,
And we did not price out all that stuff
No.
because we just
Yeah.
running out of time trying to.
And
Yeah.
again, there aren't a great number of boats. going
well, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, so since I've been here, it sounds like I've been here forever, but I haven't, but in the over a decade that I've been here, the very small fleet that's still moored here no longer moors
Correct.
at the end of the thing, so there are no regular boats here. And I think I could probably count on, maybe not one hand, I might need both hands, the number of times I've actually seen a commercial truck coming to the wharf to unload something from
Yeah.
a boat.
It has a-
So it's, we don't have anyone that's come forward to support the notion that we
They would
need,
like to use it.
that they would like to use the wharf commercially. We've had no one come.
And we specifically spoke to
Yeah.
I spoke to
the
the
staff
haul
at
up,
the
and
haul
they
up.
said they have no need of it. Any boat waiting to send us sit in the channel, but they could actually moor in the channel if they elected to.
Mm-hmm.
But really, they try to time it, so one boat's
They're
going
in
straight
and
off,
out,
and it
yeah.
goes right in, yeah.
But we did like
Yeah,
proactively,
absolutely, yeah.
you know, talk
yeah.
to them.
Yeah.
So closing the wharf for commercial use obviously wouldn't include the floating dock. Would we have to do anything with the floating dock if it's closed off?
Dock, it's not.
Cause that's a residential, like, it's like a residential use if someone is mooring out in the water and they bring their boat in, like their little.
Recreational.
Recreational, it's just recreational. use.
Yeah, they can tie up a tender there,
Yeah.
so it's not always wet any longer because of silt buildup,
Yeah.
but yeah, you.
But-
And that
So that
floating,
won't
that
close
floating
that
dock has the appropriate height railings and all of that,
Correct.
because
It is
it was
doing
built for that,
that,
yeah.
Um, I think I know the answer to my question, but I'm gonna ask it anyways, but when I started reading this, I started looking in the internet for different places all around the world where they've had similar problems and what they've done, and sometimes you see like a wood post and then just railings like this, but I'm assuming that wouldn't meet the safety concern that we have.
No, so I mean, part of what's driving this is of course the OHS report, but we still have to abide by building codes and things like that.
Okay.
And so when it comes to things like fall protection and guardrails, that is addressed in the building code, so it needs to not be easily climbable. And this is just to protect children more than adults,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it can't be just
Can't be.
a guardrail in name only, like it can't be like decorative rope and things like that, it has to actually provide some protection. And even for the workers there, I'm quite clumsy at times, so, you know, I want something that's gonna stop me.
This is a kind of an odd question, but I don't even know how quite to ask it, but could we beautify it in any way with, so it is the galvanized thing, but could we do like marine rope
My
on it or
understanding
something
is,
to make it?
yeah, my understanding is as long as it doesn't compromise the safety people,
Of
like,
the-
if
yeah.
it was, had decorative rope on it, but it was on the outside, right?
Yeah.
So we're not creating a ladder.
Yeah,
Or something.
exactly,
I
yeah,
mean, we would.
or just along the top of it or
Yeah, we would
something.
seek advice, but I don't think that would be any issue.
Cause then you would get rid of that pokey weird look at the top of the
Sure.
galvanized fence, you would just have a big hunk of rope go around. That would soften the look and make it fit in.
It did cross my mind as I was looking at options that nowhere else in the world experiences the level of ties that we do. So what works other places, you know, maybe wouldn't
Sure,
work.
yeah, you're
here.
not gonna have the drastic.
The drop.
Yeah, and the dry land twice a day.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, all right, any other questions on this topic?
Not on the
Okay.
barricades, the only, I mean, there's 4 and 5 listed in the proposal, and what we've just talked about is really 1, 2, and 3. I guess my question is simply that if we were to put forward 1, 2, and 3, then we don't necessarily need to address 4 and 5 this minute.
So 4 is do nothing, so if we do nothing, then we just leave it with
Exactly.
renting this spot and keeping it and giving it
Yeah.
more time. If you wanna do nothing now and go to the public.
Yeah.
That's an option, yeah, and then how to go to the public is kind of number 5, what?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of a bigger
Bigger.
discussion.
Yeah.
That maybe,
And right now, we're just asking Ken questions.
yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to get, that if we deal with 1, 2, and 3, then 4 and 5 can be.
Or you deal with 4 and do nothing.
And do nothing,
And wait,
yeah.
and 1, 2, and 3.
I'm
right?
personally not interested in 4, but.
Yeah, but just as like, yeah.
Yeah,
there's
as a
always
possibility,
options, right?
it's
Yeah.
an option, okay.
So
Any other questions then for Ken or staff?
do you, and do you want to cover this second topic before or?
No.
Okay, good. All right. And any other questions then for Ken or staff? Okay.
So are we, not necessarily a question for Ken or staff, but so are we coming?
So now we'll ask for a motion and then we'll discuss the motion and then and what I'd like to propose is maybe we can, similar to what you were saying, handle the 3 topics that we've kind of discussed right now, which would be directing the staff, the potential to direct the staff just to stop, to erect. French
Correct.
doesn't help. Stop commercial use. The second part of that is to continue the closure for 2 months to permit people to do the final footwork, actually make the changes and so on. And then the last one would be deciding on what we want to do with the barriers, although I don't know that. Yeah, let's make that motion and then we can discuss it, right?
Yeah, so I think it should be all separate motions instead of trying to
Yeah, that's
Is
what
there
I was
one
where I was
complicated
trying to go
one?
with that
Yeah.
too. So maybe if we start going at the end of what you suggested there, Sybil, is we start first with the agreement to extend the closure for another 2 months. That would be a simple motion to start with quickly.
Yeah,
Okay, so moved. I move that we extend the closure of the wharf for another 2-month period,
Ending April 30th, 2020.
ending April 30th, 2025, at which point it can be revisited if necessary.
I'm sorry, I need a seconder, okay, so now we can discuss, so. I would be in favor of extending it for 2 months. I like the idea of keeping it open because things can happen that are unexpected. I think it gives the staff the time to do what's necessary and keep the public safe, but then we've also got an end point, and it would be great if we can have everything open for the summer season.
I have no questions further to what we've discussed.
Okay, so I will restate the motion. It was moved that we, direct the staff to continue the closure of the wharf for 2 months to permit, finalization of the understanding of what we need to do to put the barriers and curbs in place to actually.
No, I just asked him to read
Yeah.
the motion.
I've got that move that we extend the closure of the wharf for another 2 months, ending April the 2025. It can be revisited if necessary.
Okay,
That one, okay?
Yeah,
so,
call for the question.
All vote, yeah.
yeah, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's against, so motion carried. Okay. So shall we move then on to the commercial use question? We have a person to make a motion for that then.
I can move that again if, so I would move that we close the Annapolis Royal Wharf to commercial fishing. Use or commercial use instead of fishing. I move that we close the Annapolis Royal Wharf to commercial use, period.
Sorry, does that mean we can't ever have like kiosks out there selling things, or I think we need, the intent is that commercial
fishing use? I don't know how we.
I mean, it's up to you.
Yeah, well, the proposal was close the wharf to all commercial fishing.
Yeah.
And
so
staff
that's-
has confirmed that the boat haul up to see that they
Yeah,
don't
no
need
more
it.
mooring.
Yeah, they don't, so there'd be no more mooring, and that prevents a whole bunch of other work that we can't do. And so I think if we I move that we close the Annapolis Royal Wharf to all commercial fishing. That's the first line of the proposal.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously carried. All right, so now we can discuss the barriers and what we want to do with them. So, for motion here, I guess we need to talk about somebody who agrees with the idea needs to propose that we erect some barriers. I guess we need to have a discussion about what we think is best. So does somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that we install barricades, guardrails, and signage around 2/3 part of the wharf. And install wooden curb stops. Replace wooden curb stops
And the other 1/3.
on the other 1/3.
Can I have a seconder? No, we want to discuss first, right?
You have just had a
Yeah,
second or
second.
discuss.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll throw the topic open for discussion.
So I think you have to be specific on what barriers and what
Okay, so
ones you want.
the chain link barriers.
Well, I
For
think
the
that's
chain
part
link
of the
fence?
discussion right now. I think it's what
Okay.
barriers
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
want.
Well.
And then if we have to amend the motion, you as the person who made it and you as the seconder can agree to added verbiage if we need to after the discussion.
I don't have to agree necessarily, but with the secondary, don't I?
Yeah.
You don't have to.
No,
raise
no,
a second, no. The person who proposes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the discussion needs to be around all of the information that we've been given about the barricades.
Which
mean,
style?
Which style,
Yeah.
like all of the different possibilities.
Yeah.
I know some people think the concrete are ugly. I was a bit disappointed that they're too heavy because I saw some really nice things that you
Yeah.
could do with them, but
Saw some
we
beautiful
don't
ones.
wanna put the wharf at further risk is
No.
my feeling. My feeling about the sort of movable ones that have the little gap under them, I struggle to see how you detach those so somebody wasn't tempted to run off with them in the night if they were teenagers or
Right, we
older
would-
people who were
Like
delinquent.
you would, you finder, we would drill through and
Okay.
epoxy and bolt them.
Yeah,
It's not perfect, but it would be fairly secure.
but, yeah, I, for me, I don't see them as being as that attractive, but.
Yeah, I find them very institutional looking, those
think-
ones.
From a safety perspective, I could see my kids running underneath.
Yeah,
quite
exactly.
easily, So I think that the chain link is probably more suitable.
And I prefer to buy from Annapolis from Medford.
Yes, that's.
Yeah.
another good point. That was my other disappointment, was the concrete stuff was truly made here in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least we're buying it from a local business if we.
I mean, I think that the galvanized fencing, and I agree that having the coated is better than not. From a visual perspective as well, but I think also from a user, people being up close to it and being next to it and that sort of thing. I would personally love to encourage that we try and find some way to, I hate using this word, but to beautify it in some way, but by that I simply mean something that makes it look a little bit more wharf-like. So that it doesn't look like we just fenced off the wharf is
Filtering the
basically.
people.
Yeah, it's strategically, but I'm not suggesting that we need to figure out a way to incorporate that in the cost that is occurring right now, but perhaps that could be front of mind for any beautification grants or things that we could potentially find to do something that makes it just a little bit more wharf-like.
So with concrete barriers, they could obviously be utilized in,
They're portable.
Exactly.
Obviously, yeah.
could a chain fence ever be repurposed? in
Not
another way?
To the same extent, I mean, in theory, we could, because, I mean, you're setting the posts in the concrete.
Right.
Those probably not, but the
Can
chain
be
link
re-rolled.
itself, you could probably cut it up and re-roll it.
Okay.
I'm for the least expensive that we have to pay in the situation that we're in.
Good point.
And we also have to consider budget, so we don't have this much money in our current
We don't
budget.
have-
So we would have to put it in our 2025-2026 budget. So that also comes with timing, so I won't even be allowed to order this. Until April 1.
Which would mean
Which-
that we would require an
Would
extension,
probably,
but we'd be prepared for that.
exactly, so just so you're aware that.
And could there, a question about that, so when you say I'm not allowed to even order it until April 1. If we went to Home Hardware, for example, and said, this is the situation we're in, this is the products we need, but we can't pay it until our next budget cycle. And perhaps they went, okay. Could we go that route? Like,
Well, we can
when you
order
say,
it, but we can't be invoiced.
yes,
until
that's what
April
that's the exact question I'm asking, as long as the invoice doesn't
We-
come until
We
after
worked with
April
Congress
1st.
just before,
Yeah.
as long as the item's been approved by council, just to help mitigate. if there's
Yeah.
Any kind of significant lead time.
Yeah.
So kind of like on April 1, it's like,
And it would require budget pre-approval.
yes, yeah, only approved on. we would never-
Couldn't be done without pre-approval.
Yeah. Because I think I couldn't, Sybil kind of made the point earlier about wanting this to be, if we have to do this, wanting this to all be done in time for when we start to see the new season, which is essentially starts to begin in May.
Yeah.
So if we have,
Ducks in a row.
if we have our ducks in a row, can we actually meet those timelines?
And we would still have to get quotes for installation. There's still a lot of work. It's
Yeah.
not like we just, go to Home Harbor and say,
No, exactly,
we still have to do background work
yeah.
and
The
wait
big
on
thing with
whether.
budget is it is still possible for an SPI to file in 2025. And if they do, then we're looking at crunch time next year. So reserves are a huge issue. We'd be depleting our reserves
Yeah.
instead of filling them. So that's just the other side.
Sorry, what's an SPI?
Sorry, well, anything we spend, we're basically, it's money we can't send to reserves.
So Nova Scotia Power, she's talking about the grant in lieu of taxes, potentially they could file to decommission this year.
No, I understand that. I just didn't know what the acronym SPI
Oh,
was.
yeah, NSPI.
Sorry, Nova Scotia.
Oh, I didn't hear the N.
Sorry.
I just heard SPI.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same question.
It's just anything we take cannot go to.
No,
reserves.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because I didn't know the acronym.
But when you put this in the budget, at least the tax rate is, it's not an addition to your budget. So when you include it, it's included right up front. So the tax rate is set on all your expenses for the
To
year. It's
factor
not
it
like
in, yeah,
after the fact, then you're coming and asking for another $12,000.
Yeah.
Right? That wasn't
And
done through tax rate.
there was something in the package too about the potential to apply for beautification grants. Is that still a possibility of changing?
Not for chain
fencing?
link fence, no.
Didn't think so, but
That
no,
would've
we
been
could
for
apply
to
for something
paint.
to beautify the chain link
Yeah.
fence, but not for the fence itself.
Mhm. Anybody else have anything they want to say on the topic? Are we ready then to, do you mind repeating the motion?
Okay. It's moved to install barricades, guardrails and signage on the third part of the wall and replace wooden curb stops on the other third of the wall.
2/3 for the
Two-thirds.
first part,
Oh, sorry, yeah, 2/3, sorry.
and then the barricade would have to state,
Which one we're
Yeah.
choosing.
yeah, the black.
So do you want to amend your motion to include which one?
To include the,
Galvanized.
galvanized fencing.
Black.
Black.
Probably say the black vinyl coating because there was
Oh,
galvanized.
yeah, sorry, yeah,
Right,
no,
right,
black
yes.
vinyl coated fencing, metal fencing. Do we need to include the money?
That will be another motion.
That'll be a separate one, okay.
Yes.
So do you want to, when you're ready? Just so we're really clear.
Okay, to install the galvanized black vinyl coating metal fencing, the barricades, guardrails and signage on the 2/3 part of the wall and replace wooden curb stops on the other third of the wall.
Are you
I
comfortable?
don't think it's still galvanized though. I think it's,
It's galvanized inside under the.
It is
Oh,
galvanized
is
under
it?
the black
Okay.
vinyl, because
Okay.
otherwise it would rust immediately when it was on there.
Are you comfortable with it? Lynn?
Description,
it's like,
11 gauge
Is that
vinyl
11
coated chain
11
link
gauge?
fence,
vinyl coated,
galvanized steel
But
wire with an extruded
can
PVC
we-
layer.
yeah, galvanized steel wire fence would probably cover it.
Is it's the black coated fencing.
that's what I, like, I think you need to say black.
Yeah.
Because if we just, or if
I
it
will
just,
in there, Kim?
propose the extra expense for black powder, so I think it's important just. to-
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
Okay.
what's been voted for.
black vinyl coated galvanized steel wire fence.
and this is the only one that's been
So
quoted.
Amory, you would
Yeah.
oppose it if it was the,
New line?
Yeah.
the bicycle ones?
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
all right.
same,
That's,
yeah.
Okay. Are you comfortable with your
I'm
motion?
comfortable
now?
with that galvanized
Black.
vinyl.
So everybody's clear on what the motion is? Do we need to repeat it again? No. Are you comfortable to continue a second? Okay. Shall we have the vote? All in favor? Unanimously carried. All right.
So now we need one more motion to pre-approve the purchase of the fencing in the 25-26 operating budget in the amount of,
So it says here that the costing is between 35,000 and 70,000. so that's what it says in the costs and source of funding.
Yeah, but that was
That was
before,
before
That was before
all of
this.
that.
So then we would be looking at 19,000 because 6,000 for the wooden curbs.
Yep.
And 13,000 for the fencing.
19,500.
19,500.
So you've got including HST everywhere?
Plus HST, I guess.
No, this includes HST.
Oh, that
Okay,
would
so
be
I
it.
wasn't sure
That
what number you.
6,549 includes HST.
Yeah,
But did the wooden
wood?
curb,
We don't have the solid figure.
They don't have those dollars,
So-
but we only have the fencing figure.
But I can always spend less, I can't spend more than the approval.
yes.
so in other words, would we be better off to have a slightly higher and say up to
Is that-
21 or 22,000?
Cause I'm always gonna.
Yeah, but that would allow us to deal with the unknowns about the wooden curb, that we can't get that information until after we,
Yeah, and if something were to change that I couldn't get it for a price anticipated, it would come back to you anyway.
Anyways,
To
yeah.
be specifically reviewed.
so we need a motion on the table, is that
Yeah,
what we
just
need?
let Sandy do her mouth.
So I'm still coming up with 20,000.
So he said 6,000 for the wooden curbs and 13,000 for the fencing and install.
13,500.
13,500.
No, because I had 7,500. Didn't we talk about
Yeah,
7,500 today?
Chat, yeah.
And then the 65.
Where did 65 come from?
The 65 is the chain link fence.
Oh,
The
sorry.
7,500 is the installation of the fence. And then 6,000 is the wood plus installation of the wooden curb stops.
So that's still adding up to 19,500 for me.
That's what I got. Oh. It would be 19,549.77. That's what I got. Your calculator.
There's something going on there.
The difference between your 6,000 or your 7,000 and your 7,500.
So in any case, since we're saying up to, we ought to round it.
That's what I
Can we
was
just
trying to
say
get to.
20,000 or,
Up to a maximum of
Yeah.
$20,000, including HST.
And see that, just wait a second, that's why I said maybe we should actually do 21 or 22,000. Because we don't have exact numbers on the wooden curb,
Yeah.
and so we,
The installation side of it.
yeah,
So that's, the numbers like.
yeah. So
up
I
to
would
you, but we
suggest
need to
that
say
we,
HST included or plus HST. Those are just points that have to be included.
okay.
so.
So what's your
I have
number?
a motion, I would say go.
Okay, let me try this again. So I move that we pre-approve up to,
From the
we pre-approve from the 2025-2026 budget,
operating,
operating budget, up to 22,500,
500. HST.
including HST, for the purchase and installation of the barricade and wooden curb stops for the wharf. Feel like I'm talking so slowly, but I think I got everything in there.
Appreciate.
That's what I'm hoping Ken captures it all and then can make sure that we got it right.
Can I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, or do we need to discuss more, or are we ready for the vote?
Ready for that?
Okay, can I have
Better now.
all in favor?
Yeah.
Hi.
Carried unanimously.
That wasn't so painful.
now there's one more.
Yeah, and this is the public meeting? Yeah. Okay, so then, do you want to explain a little bit about what you've been trying to do and where some of your challenges have been? And,
I haven't had time
okay,
because we've done a survey, we've done a public meeting. So we could table this since we spent a lot of time already on it. We could table it and put it on the agenda for council and just discuss maybe options of going forward.
I think that's the wisest thing to do, right?
Well, the other
Fine.
thing is just included in budget. Cause there should be some public something over budget, so that's another option.
And the object of that public consultation isn't to decide about the chain link fencing and the curbs, it's to talk generally about the future fate of the ward.
Yeah. And I think we all have big
Question.
questions and big input that we want to give on that. And so I think that that maybe needs to be tabled to a new discussion.
Okay, so,
I think that's the right word, tabled,
do we need a
No,
motion?
not
No,
table.
not
That
table,
would be in this
postponed.
meeting.
Yeah.
Postponed.
postponed to a new discussion. Thank you, thank you.
So do we need a motion to postpone? So
No,
are
we're
we
not
agreed, are we agreed then that we'll postpone this discussion to a subsequent meeting? Okay. Thank you.
And that's a good meeting with council, right?
Yes,
That's a subsequent meeting.
okay, so now we would like to go on to discuss the request for decision regarding the water utility cross connection and backflow prevention policy. Do you want to talk to us?
All right, we'll start by saying I will gladly get into the weeds as far as anybody wants. Cross connection, back siphonage, it's pretty dramatic stuff. But at the end of the day, we must have a form of this policy in place. It is designed to protect our water system from accidents. It helps ensure the quality of our water. To give you an example, what can happen, I recall a news story a couple of years ago where wine started coming out of people's taps in Valiant Homes.
Mhm.
Because what happened, there was a back siphonage from a winery and it pulled the wine from the vats, which were connected to the water system to fill the water into the water system. So this absolutely, I want to send you the link. This is an extreme example, but that is what the accidents of this nature is what this is intended to prevent. They basically, if there's many ways to get happen, but again, it's designed to protect our water system and we have to do it. But if there's any technical questions, I will answer.
Are there any questions for Ken?
Did you provide a definition for the approval to operate? Was that done?
No, I mean, just because, I mean, it is what it says, it is our approval to operate the water system.
So that would be the definition of
Yeah,
approval.
it is.
Approval to operate
It's
the
what
water.
it says on the tin.
Okay.
The only question I had was actually part of the question that Sybil had raised previously. This is primarily focused to commercial and multi-residential
And industrial.
and industrial,
Yes.
okay.
Now, obviously, we're only light industry here, but for example, the microbrewery. is
Yeah.
a good example.
Yeah.
And using my wine as an example.
Yeah.
So things like that, the funeral home.
The funeral home.
This policy is only stating for new connections, and that makes us compliant. Moving forward,
Forward, yeah,
we would probably look at putting a bylaw in place, which allows us to compel all properties that are deemed needing backflow prevention to have it. And then part of the whole program too is annual inspections. And so giving some teeth to the rule would be part of a bylaw saying you must do it, or there's a fine on doing more than the cost of the inspection. So that's the cheapest route to go. And again, but this policy itself makes us compliant. I mean, the word imposed sounds strong, but it's being imposed on us, but in truth, there aren't a lot of people who can inspect backflow devices, things like that. So this is early days.
yeah,
In this kind of protective process, but it needs to be done.
but we're being told that we.
Absolutely, just like last year, we had that minimum planning standards about consulting with neighboring municipalities, exactly.
Okay,
So if we're done asking staff for input, then we can entertain a motion to recommend to council the approval of the cross connection backflow prevention policy number 2025-04 dated February 2025. Does anybody
I
wish
also move.
to oh, okay,
yeah, you can move that.
sorry?
You can't as the chair move that.
Oh, yeah, okay. So do we wish to discuss, yeah, okay, you moved, now, does anybody want to talk about this anymore?
I've got all the info I need.
No.
And I will provide to the entire council the use link to the wine committee.
Thank you.
Tell us how to do it. How to make it.
I want you to feel like you have faith in your own words.
But in any case, it's not something that would ever be individual homeowners, it's really bigger organizations than that,
Individual homeowners should,
yeah.
but it's not.
And they might get a reduction in their insurance for having it. if they-
Yes, exactly, because they're actually
It's like a
safer. That's exactly right,
Yeah.
because if our town winery were to flood our system with wine, they would be liable for the repairs, for the disinfection, which would have to take place, all these things. Yes, so, and then there would be rejoicing, of course, but capital. There would be.
The hypothetical winery, town winery.
There's a rejoicing, there will be grieving.
There's no one to offend if I say that. wineries.
Exactly.
So, are we ready then, to make the motion then? And do you want me to read it to you, or,
Yeah,
okay?
perfect.
So, we're entertaining a motion to recommend to council the approval of the cross connection and backflow prevention policy number 2025-04 dated February 2025. And I have the original mover to continue, and seconder,
I'll second.
I'll take the
It
vote.
says -3 in the document. Don't want it to be any problem later on. Policy 2025-03. That's the only correction we have to that motion.
Okay, so, we will,
You don't have to amend it, it just.
yeah, okay. 2025-03 dated February 2025. So the original mover is content to continue, seconder, take the vote, all in favor?
Aye,
Aye, unanimously passed.
we got there.
Thank you very much.
All right, anything else?
Thank you.
I
Pam.
am, those are all of your.
Work here is done.
Your work here is done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
It was riveting reading.
I loved all the pictures.
Yes.
So we'll move on to the fire area rate, tab 4 in your package. So you'll have noticed that they've asked, that they want to purchase a truck for 500,000. That they're also discussing that in future, we wouldn't be buying them a truck, but contributing to them being able to buy a truck of their choice. The other thing is that they're asking about the 56,710 annual operating costs that they put forward. So I can't propose anything because I'm.
No.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
I'll throw the topic over for discussion.
As per our area rate policy, they have to come with their request. The request is before you.
Okay,
If you agree with the amounts, we just need to send that to the budget process, and through the budget, the rate will be determined over the expenses and the income.
So there's 3 asks. There's the capital request for 500K. For capital purchase. To assist the purchase of a new fire truck, with the remaining amount coming from another source within the department. The second is request to change the language. The town is responsible for purchasing a town truck. So the language of the agreement, the town would be providing funding to support a cost share and FTA frontline fire suppression vehicle to be determined by VFD that will meet the needs of the department. And third is the operating request for 56,710 for the 25-26 budget. So those are the 3 items that they're requesting, right?
Right, so 2 of them are just going to the
To budget.
budget,
Yeah.
if you agree to the 500K for a truck of their own making.
So I guess the first thing is to agree to amend the language of the agreement. Then between us,
No, well,
or go to budget and then depending
Yeah.
on what happens with budget, then change the
they
language.
just the language, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's deciding,
Okay.
you know, if,
So referral to budget could be moved for both those amounts,
Yeah.
capital and operating.
yeah, because they're in one amount, they both
Yeah.
get added together, so the 500K would result current as the town would be setting aside $30,000 a year for 15 years. To pay back the loan,
sorry, you said for how many years?
I think 15.
15.
The truck would be good for 25, but I think the loan is for 15.
Okay. And isn't there, I'm going vague on my memory here, but do we already have an amount in our agreement somewhere that says the town provides X amount?
No,
Okay,
the agreement stated that we had to buy them a first line fire suppression truck.
period.
Yeah.
And that was
And
that.
it,
And so,
because we were always responsible for one of our own very own trucks. Now this way, we are not going to have one of our own trucks anymore. It
we're
would be a
responsible for
joint-
contributing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be
So
like-
would that contribution amount potentially then change in the future? Like,
Oh, yes, because like, when this truck is no longer valid in 25
Mhm.
years, we're gonna have to buy a new truck, which will probably be 2 million instead of 1 million.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
it's
okay,
25 years later, right?
yeah, yeah, they're not gonna get cheaper, exactly.
No, yeah.
Well, they might, AI.
Yeah, visualize the fire, it's not happening.
Yeah.
AI doesn't like to get up at 2 AM.
Exactly.
Right, so we agreed to send that to budget then? Okay. So our next topic is the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities Elected Officials letter written by Amory. And in your package, everybody's had a chance to look at it. Any comments?
With this letter,
What prompted it? What prompted is that this can happen. Like,
right, but it's not,
bar.
right,
So, and it has happened in municipal units.
Okay.
So it's something that has happened, and we did bring it up with the last code of conduct review, we brought this loophole up. Fact that if you run for an election, there's one set of rules,
Mhm.
and then as soon as you're on council, it doesn't matter anymore if you owe the town. Forever while you're there. So it was brought up at that time that that was a loophole. The idea being financial distress is what causes a lot of things to go off the rails, so that was the, yeah. And it came up in orientation,
Yeah.
yes, and I brought this up again with Mr. Pond, yes. And he said, well, don't, he thought, well, don't give up on NSFM, refer it again, so that was his suggestion, so.
So are we looking for a motion to approve that this letter be sent? Is
Or
that,
just direction, if you're okay with the letter, it's just direction, it can be sent or not, yeah.
I mean, I support it. I read it and thought it made perfect sense to me, because I agree with you that it is a loophole that is worth closing.
I agree. Great. All right, shall we move on then? So we've already covered the first item in new business, suggested changes to rules of order in meeting process, 7.
Sure, this resulted from training that the CAO and deputy mayor and I had. And there were just points of interest that came up that we thought we'd share. We're not saying that everything needs to be changed. But the list, we gave you a list of, I think, 13 items. And I understand that Councillor McDonald brought up another one, change in our, she brought up that should be considered, so number 14. That we hadn't noticed, but we have to change the procedures. So this is just out for discussion, really, to see what, if anything, you would like to change in our meetings and procedures rules. So we could just go through the list quickly to see. So for example, the deputy mayor and I have already tried to tie up on the phrasing for motions. That's something we're trying to do. I don't think that's an issue. So the second one is basically after motion is moved, the chair states the motion. We've been doing that. I don't think we need to change the rules to do that. So that's just protocol. After discussion, has everyone had the opportunity to speak? And so that, again, that's just, if you're okay with that, you simply adopt it. if there's no further discussion, then we move on.
So this one is because it was suggested that we don't ask the question anymore.
Right. We
So
don't ask
before-
the question, yeah.
Somebody would be discussing an item and someone could just all of a sudden blurt out.
Question.
Ask for the question,
Yeah.
and then that means that no one else has the right to speak.
Yeah.
So by not asking for the question and just asking if everybody has
Mhm.
an opportunity to speak, it's.
Yeah.
Are we ready to move forward kind of thing, so.
And we have
Better
a
is
time
that,
limit
more
for
fair way to
speaking.
proceed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and at the end of the meeting, if there's no further business, we've been doing that, the meeting is adjourned, so we've been doing that already. Member may speak, so this is the, so again, this was just highlighting, we have that now in our rules and procedures. So this is just reinforcing. So that we're supposed to speak twice on, now we've been kind of loose about this because nobody goes on for 10 minutes. But it's just to, so if you're okay with that rule, we have that baked in right now.
I've come close, so I think it's a good rule.
Well, we've had no abuses of it, that's all I can say. Now, this is interesting, so the mover of motion must be a member who supports the motion. And it doesn't apply to seconder, so I'm wondering if we should put that in.
For the seconder?
No, for the mover of the motion.
Just say that the mover of the motion must agree with it.
Yeah.
So if you don't.
But that's
agree-
in Robert's rules, is it
That
not?
is in
Yeah,
Robert's
Yeah,
rules,
so
so-
we just say
Because we
that.
say that
Yeah,
our policy does state that we follow Robert's rules, number
then
of
we should
motion, blah,
put
blah,
that
blah.
Yeah.
in. And there's an argument about whether it's 11th or 12th edition, but I'm pretty sure the 12th edition is the most current.
Mhm.
It's not
The policy states which one it is.
Yeah, so I believe it's 12. And 7, this is just a matter of decorum. So this is just to let people know, this came up in our training about how do you approach ticklish things. And this was straight from our parliamentarian, Chris, CAO from the, basically he was saying how we would handle such a thing. So again, that's a matter of decorum, not rules. Substantive motions, now this is the tricky one, so this puts the onus on whoever's chairing the meeting to make sure that we're looking at the motions that are in request for decision ahead of time for wording. So we have to be doing them ahead of time. We don't always have the motions, well, we always have them before the meeting starts, so.
But you also have them in your request for decisions.
When
So
they're in the request for decisions, so we
they're
have to
always-
look for
yeah.
them there and make sure they're correct, so that's just for basically Deputy Mayor and I, or well, whoever else, does this. Okay. Now, the list of applicable legislation is interesting, there was a whole page of stuff. But we thought we could tackle that by just updating the strategic plan, putting an appendix at the back of all the legislations. There's a longer list than the one that we have in the strategic plan. And that's there's page 104 in the text, so we can do that when we go through it, and I'll provide the list for that.
Okay, I understand.
Don't need to change the rules. Robert's Rules 12th edition, I'm the only one who doesn't have the 12th edition. I've got rid of my other 2 copies, and I'm gonna go down to Bankins and get the right one. After an agenda is passed out the Thursday before every meeting, and I think we've just gone over that too, right?
Yeah.
And people are very good about getting their questions in ahead of time. So I don't know that we need a rule change for this, that's our internal thing. And non-substantive correspondence, so for example, about the person who wanted to make the film, we handled that in between, Sandy sent off the letter, so anything we can handle that's just routine business, we do. And then finally, all reports submitted, that's all there, highlights only for meetings. So it doesn't look like there's any substantive change, except for the one that I don't brought up, which is Article 14, no, I think.
4.45 and 4.51.
4.51.
So 4.51 says that if the deputy mayor is away, then the vice chair should lead the meeting. But in 4.5, it says that the mayor is the chair and the deputy mayor is the vice chair. So 4.51 just needs some verbiage changed so that it's clear that it's not the deputy mayor replacing herself when she's not there. I think it would be as simple as just changing that vice chair to either be chair or to be mayor.
Yeah.
One or the other.
Exactly, yeah. And so we'll just bring that forward, for March.
Perfect.
All right, thanks for bringing that up, Adele. So that's the only change we need. So that was the results of the training. And we spent a whole day at it. So what was good was that we were able to confirm, one of the differences with Annapolis Royal is that we do have a committee of the whole that's chaired by the deputy mayor. And that was unusual for the rest of them to hear. So, but it's a change we made last time. And I think you've got the 2023 changes that were made. That's Kim copied, everybody just say have them. We made quite a few changes a year ago. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further on that topic? Okay, shall we move on to item 3 under new business, repeal and replace policy establishing the audit committee, sorry.
The audit committee.
Audit committee. And so we will entertain a motion to recommend to council the repeal of the policy establishing the I can't say it now, audit committee.
Not
Commitment number 2019-01 and replacement with audit committee policy number 2025-04, is that correct?
Yes.
Dated February 2025.
Too many fire calls.
Yeah. Would anybody like to make a motion on that? Okay.
I'll second.
All right, on the motions on the floor for discussion now, then any,
So we're having problems finding someone to sit on the committee, so, and getting a quorum. So we're changing just to have it either be either or, a member of council and resident. Or 2 members of council, just so we can get business done and follow policies to allow us to get that done. And the second one was something.
Right at the end, 8.5
was
or
yeah,
2
or
councillors.
2 councillors.
And then the first one was just the part about the citizen appointments. Which I think is smart. I mean, it solves a problem and I think I can't remember who you're on the audit committee, aren't you?
And the chair.
The chair.
I am.
But we'll still continue to look and see if we can find a representative. So.
But I think that's a
harder and
smart.
harder to fill those positions.
Yeah, it is,
There's almost
yeah.
nobody left to do them.
That's true across the board,
Yeah.
nonprofits everywhere.
Is there a way to incentivize participation? I mean, just like a coffee?
A mug,
Drive.
a town of Annapolis Royal mug. I don't know what,
I think it's a whole head breaking part of going through the consolidated financial statements and
Yeah, it's just not.
the challenge.
it's not for anybody, just having gone through the condo loan agreement. It's not for the week of the faint of heart.
Yeah.
Well, which is why potentially, I don't know, providing some sort of incentive.
Okay, can you?
No, I mean,
Came up at a meeting today I was at.
Like financials, like
yeah, a gift card, like a thank you gift card, or some sort of like recognition at the end of the year. I don't know.
yeah, so we have a lot of committees and a lot of people, so that would add,
That would
your-
be every committee that. would
every
be
committee
part of
would
that.
have to, right?
I'm just trying to think out of the box of like how to get people.
Cake and
on.
coffee, we'd have no problem recruiting committee members, right?
We provide refreshment.
Yeah.
I mean, I approve I think that the policy adjustment is definitely a way that we have to deal because of this ongoing issue. The question of incentivizing people might have to be a different question for.
how much of a commitment is it for people? I mean, they're not in a meeting every.
Twice a year, isn't it?
Twice
Yeah.
a
This
year.
one's just twice a
Not
year.
a whole lot.
You know,
And I wonder, like,
But this one does require like a financial
You
backup.
have to have a financial
It can't
understanding.
just be, you know.
me. There's a reason I didn't volunteer for that one.
And my husband is disqualified.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Because it can't be a close family member, which
Yeah.
makes total
Mm,
sense.
okay.
Yeah, for, yeah,
yeah, so there's,
Right.
yeah.
so.
Now, is
It's
there,
really difficult in a small town.
It does.
is there, just almost to kind of follow up on the incentivizing thing, but is or has there been any kind of proactive recruitment? Like, so I mean, we're a small town, we can kind of look around at the community and see who are people that might be qualified to be sitting on this particular type of committee. And then literally going to them and saying, hey, listen, we could really use your help.
Yeah, there
with
has
this."
been extensive proactivity.
Has there? Okay.
Is there a
yes.
minimum age? Do they need to be 18?
I
They
was
have
wondering
to follow, they have to be able to do those quizzes that you did. Like,
I mean,
there was like a quiz or,
Yeah, there was, well, it actually wasn't.
they're very self-guided modules, like I'm
Yeah,
just thinking
modules
about
that you had to
the
do,
high
right?
school,
Yeah,
like
maybe
students
kids
who
who
are
are wanting to go into
accounting and
Yeah.
being able to like write them a letter of support for their university applications or something like that, like,
yeah.
Yeah,
I think
be a good experience.
it'd be a
for them,
fabulous
yeah.
experience.
So that might be an interesting thread to pull on to see if there's
It-
something
Good
there.
idea.
council goes off, maybe we could mention it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, that is an interesting, good work, interesting thought. Do we have, gosh, this was so long ago. Did we have a motion on the floor for this?
Yes, we did, yeah, so if we're, are we done discussing?
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion that was put on the floor was to recommend to council the repeal of the policy established in the audit commitment.
Committee, sorry.
Oh, okay. It's not me. I
No,
thought
it
was
isn't you.
me.
It says commitment.
The audit committee number 2019-01 and replacement with audit committee policy number 2025-04 dated February 2025.
So moved.
So moved, and you happy to, okay,
But I think the motion has to say repeal and replace, not replacements, because it's like a.
To
And it's
repeal
replacement.
and
It's
replace.
replacement with.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I
recommend to
Yeah,
council to
correct.
repeal and replace.
repeal and replace.
Yeah,
yeah.
Shall I read it again then?
No, we're good.
Let me say audit. Okay, may we vote, please? All in favor? Carried unanimously. All right, so next, my favorite topic,
No, not your
No, no,
favorite
no,
topic yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Request for decision extending the town's limit on credit cards.
I was kind of wondering why that was your favorite.
Okay, so the motion.
No, you can't read the motion. Someone on the floor always has to
Have
put
to
the
read it.
motion.
Okay,
You
can I have
only-
somebody to
you
make the
only
motion?
Can
Repeat
repeat
it
it
once it
before the
comes out.
vote, yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so I'll make that motion. I move that council approves that the Director of Finance is hereby authorized on behalf of the town of Annapolis Royal to execute under its corporate seal a Scotia Visa business card agreement in the amount of $20,000 on the bank's regular form.
Second.
okay. Throw it to the floor for discussion.
I think it's absolutely reasonable.
I'm surprised it wasn't already there.
And that's for all 3 credit cards, not 1 credit card.
Yeah,
Absolutely reasonable.
yeah, absolutely reasonable, and I'm
Any
surprised it wasn't. in
Further
place.
discussion then? All right, you wanna reiterate? So we have before us a motion that the council approve that the Director of Finance is hereby authorized on behalf of the town of Annapolis Royal to execute under its corporate seal Scotia Visa business card agreement in the amount of $20,000 on the bank's regular form. Does the original or mover
No, you don't have to do
You don't
that.
have to do that, you
just take the vote?
take the vote.
Okay,
Yeah.
can we vote then? All in favor?
I.
Sorry.
Ooh, where am I?
I know, I was like surprised by that.
Very reasonable.
But I'm not voting for it. In 5 seconds.
Now my favorite topic, the
There you
deer
go.
task team. So, the terms of reference for the package, the team worked together to pull them together. We ran them past Sandy with some suggestions, some of which were incorporated, some we said we would do after this, if you guys had further comments. Any comments?
Look good to me.
Yeah,
Well done.
yeah, I think so too. That gives you a broad yet focused.
Yeah, so my comment was that I don't think it should be limited to one representative from town council. If anybody or if everybody from council wants to sit on the tasking, they should be allowed. And I don't think there should be a limit to like a minimum of 4 people, that's fine. Because like you might have 10 people one time and 4 people one time show up, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that it should be restrictive for council. Just as, you know, you should have the right to go to any meeting and listen of what is
And
proposed.
As a member
one
of the public
accommodation
or
that we
as a-
came to
as a
is we
counselor,
did want it
yeah.
to be we wanted to make sure there was a significant presence of voices from the town. Because anybody can participate, but it is something that very directly concerns people within the town limit. So not saying that people outside of the town can't participate, but that, you know, we wanted a significant presence. So we were gonna make the changes that Sandy proposed.
Because you don't really talk about other people. Like non-residents, you don't talk about them at all in here.
And so you
Right,
might
so-
just simply say, and can include non-residents, but it
Exactly.
needs a minimum of 4 residents of the town.
And all the deer are probably non-residents traveling from other
They
counties.
are.
We could say a minimum of 1 town councillor too, you know.
Yeah, and that may be a better way to put it, a
Right.
minimum of 1 town councillor.
And this is just an advisory committee anyway,
It's
so
a-
you have
yeah.
no,
Cost,
yeah, you have no authorities, you just bring forward.
Cooling recommendations that are coming back to us, is that,
Okay.
yeah.
So, can we approve it then with those changes, or do I need to make the changes first?
No, because it's just recommending to council, so the
Right,
changes
so
will
we
be
can
on
make the
the.
changes into
the
other
council.
council, okay, all right, so, then
Can you
I
just
need a
repeat the
motion.
changes? So you're gonna change it to be,
a minimum of 1 counselor and a minimum, or, other people from outside of town are welcome to participate also, or nice words to that effect, okay. So then,
Somebody
I need a
needs to
motion.
move, needs to move who agrees with this.
I'll move.
what are you moving, Emery?
I am moving that a recommendation be.
It's on the
made to
bottom of the
council
sheet there.
That the representatives on the, yes, I got it right here. Recommend council to approve the terms of reference of the deer task team dated January 25th as presented with the change that there be a minimum of 1 counselor on the task team. And that representatives from outside the town would be free to join. Welcome. Yes. That's what I move.
I'll second that.
do we need any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. So then the next, letter is the library funding letter to the Minister of Communities, Culture, Tourism and Heritage, which is tab 11. In the package and requires signature by a number of people. The intent is to make the point that the province ought to pay more, not that the municipality should. And any comments on the letter?
It doesn't say that,
Yeah,
first
that's
of
what
all.
I'm worried about.
There's no reference to Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, which I don't understand. Including consulting us. Yeah, there's no consulting us about the road ahead. And we have significant financial issues with the current arrangements on multiple fronts, capital, operating, everything.
So this letter came to us from
Now it came to us from a variety of people. Was it Zebian and Corkum? I'm not sure who started the letter.
That's what I didn't understand.
It's either one of them.
Yeah. So the mayor of County of Kings and the mayor of the town of Kentville.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So those are the two. So to me, I don't know why we would do something like this and not run it through NSFM. Just don't understand.
I share your same concern. At the very least, I would be going back to them and saying, here's the key points that you're missing, you know. Because there are some major points that are missing in this letter that I don't think. I think they do themselves a disservice by not, and us, by not including that information in the letter, if the letter were even to be sent. Without going through an SFM or some other form of lobbying, but I just thought the same thing, that it didn't have a clear ask.
So what we could do is get back to them with saying we bought this initiative, but here's what our preference is, and then we could leave it open that they amend the letter or we write our own letter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your preference? Where do you want to end up? Do you want us to end up composing some letter or other? Like, just what's the end game?
Well, I think if it goes as a group, it's more impactful, but I would really have to push on them, including the more specific asks.
Okay, so we can do
That
that.
would be my opinion anyways.
We can go back and just say we've discussed it at council, not what we've decided. Okay.
Any other comments on that?
So what do you want included in the letter, and who's gonna
I
redraft the
can
letter?
attempt to redraft in time for the council meeting. Yeah. And I can quietly talk to one of these gentlemen, whoever started it.
So, shall we move to the next topic then? Moving towards consistent and impactful emergency response, Kim Maislin, Minister of Emergency Management, tab 12. Any thoughts or comments on that?
I'd asked staff what Brian Ord, our remote guy, said, and they're going to be discussing this at an upcoming meeting. I guess that's what the CIO is, right, Sandy?
Yeah, on Friday.
Yeah, so they'll be discussing it, so we could be directed by whatever comes out of that, because they'll have more information we do.
Okay. Shall we move on then? Code of conduct clarification in municipality of Chester, tab 13.
So this letter went, and they're just they just CC'd all of the municipalities to let them know that they have some concerns.
Okay.
So we can follow up with their own letter, or just,
Well, I couldn't find any reference that we must declare a conflict of interest, or I could not find any basis for paragraph 3. Like, I'm not aware of such a rule.
I don't know that there's such a rule, but when I've asked for advice on this regarding the fire department, I've been told by one person that I don't need to recuse myself, and by another person that I do. The justification for me needing to recuse myself was that all of the firemen might vote for me if they knew that next time I run for council, if they knew that I would be voting in favor of what would be
put forward.
beneficial for them, yeah.
The good part about conflict of interest is it's up to us to declare.
Right.
Yeah, and we do have, to me, in our code, it says very clearly at the top that the town's interests come before all, it says right here, council members must act lawfully, adhere to strong ethical principles, prioritizing the town's interests over individual. So to me, that's totally clear. And if it's not clear, then a person really does have a problem. But if you're prioritizing the town, you're always moving, and if you think you can't, then you take yourself out.
Yeah.
So to me, it's pretty clear. If something is conflicting, if I feel conflicted, then I need to move and get out of the room.
Well, and I mean, there's part of me that understood their concern in the sense that you're restricting people that are serving on council from being involved in other community, or there's a potential of restricting them from being involved in other community organizations. But I tend to agree, Amory, that we are provided with training even on conflict of interest, and so we have the opportunity to make that choice for ourselves, and yeah, I mean,
It's odd that they feel that there's a regulation requiring it or an interpretation, but I mean, in the end, I think. It is, you know, in small towns, it's a problem because
Mhm.
if. You know, if everybody doesn't pull together and get involved in multiple things, the town doesn't run, and that is a fair point, but I don't know that I feel that we need to write a letter in support or anything like that.
No, and a good example is a condo board,
Yeah.
22% interest.
Yeah.
And they said, well, how come you're not voting this way? You're on this board. And I said, yeah, I'm here to represent the town's interests. So my vote will go with the town's. It's not mine by
Your
myself to
personal-
name.
Yeah,
And that's how I cleared it.
yeah,
And at first I could not vote because I didn't have the background, I didn't have the numbers, I didn't have this, so I simply abstained, which I was allowed to do over there.
yeah,
But when they asked, I said, push comes to shove, I'm here to represent the interests of the town first.
yeah,
That's what I have to do, and if I can't do it, that's when I'll recuse myself.
Mhm.
So that's how we sawed off.
okay. Are we happy with that topic then?
I think so.
Okay, Annapolis Royal Fire Department. I'm recusing myself from saying what wonderful people they.
To just test this theory.
That's just their
Just
status.
the report, yeah, impressive.
It is very
Very much so.
impressive. There, I'll say that for you.
Yeah.
I will say it as not a member, that it is very impressive, and every time I hear that alarm go off, I kind of just think about everybody that's willing to move towards the emergency instead of away from it, and appreciate it very much.
I think it's
What they
still
do.
having to get
I
out
do
and go
too.
to the cold and say, thank God it's not me.
Same, especially those late ones or.
Yeah, there was
Oh.
one. Thank
Hi,
you.
Roger.
They were there till 2 a.m.
Yeah, so 21% of the calls are in the county.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yes,
Hmm.
it's,
Yeah.
21%.
21%, sorry, 21%, sorry, you're in Annapolis Royal, it's the other way around. 80%, 79% are in the county. That's. However,
Which of course, that just raises the question for me, is our funding formula fair?
Well,
That's the only
It's
question.
not 20%.
we sure don't know.
Mhm.
Like, the thing is, do we get better insurance rates because of proximity? We probably do, like, it's a really
Yeah.
hard one. And just because the county couldn't arrive at an agreement with its fire department didn't mean we shouldn't try, and we did.
Mhm.
yeah,
So
Mhm.
Cindy negotiated that, and I
Okay.
think we're the only ones with the current fire agreement. Right? Nobody else has one that I know of.
No.
So at least we're getting along with our fire department, or being as supportive as we can.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah,
No
training
conflict there.
yeah, that just blows my mind.
They're there every Wednesday, man,
yeah.
from rain or shine.
Volunteer.
Pretty amazing.
I think that's,
That's, okay, can I have a motion to go in camera then, please? Secondary,
I'll second.
all in favor?